One sentence.
Okay, you ready? All right. I want to call this special meeting of the Finance Committee to order. The Finance Committee members, Alderwoman Finlayson and Alderman Payon, are present. First order of the agenda is to approve the agenda, and I believe we have an amendment to the agenda to take up 3 FTs. I would entertain a motion to amend the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'll recommend approval of the agenda with the addition of FT 7, 8, and 9.
Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor of the agenda as amended signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. Let's move. The minutes are in process. So the next item on the agenda is to take up these 3 FTs. The first one is FT 7-21, moving monies in public works from contractual service and other supplies for snow. I guess we're out of the woods now on having a storm, and over to contractual services. Director Dickinson, do you want to walk us through this, please?
Yes, during the year, DPW had to do some mold remediation work in a couple of our facilities that was not planned, and they also did some air quality testing in several city buildings, and they didn't have that planned for the year. So we're taking some of the money that was unspent in the snow division and moving that to the buildings so they can use it to pay for those bills.
Okay. Other questions from the committee members? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move favorable recommendation for FT 7-21.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Is this a recommendation or approval?
It's a recommendation.
Recommendation, all right. So all those in favor of the motion to recommend approval of FT 7-21 signify by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask a question, though. Wouldn't change my vote on this, but does this 52.8 cover all of our buildings, or is it just for a specific problem?
It was for the specific work done on the mold remediation and the air quality testing. It wasn't for all properties. It was just certain properties. If you, somebody from DPW could probably be more specific about what buildings they did and why.
I'm not understanding all.
I said maybe somebody from Public Works could be more specific about which buildings were treated and what happened there. If you want to know more about the work done.
I won't belabor it. I just wondered whether that was all it took to cover all of our buildings.
No.
Or just certain hotspots.
No, there were several buildings that had air quality tests performed, maybe 4 or 5 to my recollection, and the mold remediation was 2 or 3 different facilities.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is FT 8-21 for planning and zoning, moving $32,000 from salaries and benefits to supplies and others.
Yes, if you recall, we've recently had a resolution regarding this HackaChoice Neighborhood Initiative grant application. And as a part of the application process, we have to contribute $32,000 towards the effort. And we did not have that planned in this year's budget. So we're using some available savings in the planning and zoning salaries and benefits to cover that in supplies and other categories within planning and zoning. And it's before you because it exceeds the $25,000 threshold.
Alderman Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Perhaps there's someone here who can explain to the folks at home what the HackaChoice Neighborhood Initiative grant is.
Yes, it's a program to do advanced early planning for the rehabilitation of Eastport Terrace and Harbor House. This is a group that will help us, and this is a partnership between the Housing Authority and the city. This $32,000 is the beginnings. There is a tail to this, and a significant tail of somewhere in the order of, I believe it's a sharing of $325,000 in the next phase. And perhaps the city manager could explain where we will find the money for that sharing.
Well, does it cost us $32,000 just to apply for it?
Now, this is the beginning, the initial phase.
Well, it says the initiative grant application.
I'm not sure the wording is clear, but this is a project, a joint project between the city and the Housing Authority to start the preliminary planning for the redo of both Eastport Terrace and Harbor House. It gives us an early jump on it. We're partnering with the private sector, and it gives us an early start on rehabilitating those two complexes. I think we did have a plan for where we were going to find the next dollop of money.
No, yeah, Alderman Arnett, I think we're going to have to program that. And I guess the hope is that it's not until FY23 and we can just include it in the budget at that time, probably as part of the CIP, but we'll have to see where it fits best. But we did not program that in FY22.
So, Mr. Chair, so this is a program that's been developed by the city and the Housing Authority? It's not part of another initiative, the Choice Neighborhood Initiative?
The Choice Neighborhood is a much bigger initiative. We're participating with them in their program. That's a group that helps us plan and expedite the redevelopment of those two complexes. Choice Neighborhoods is a national
Well, that's what I thought, but
Yes.
from what you were saying, this is just a program between HACA and the city, and it's really part of, and it says an application, so
Right.
we're going to join the national or apply, I guess, for grant funding through the Choice Neighborhoods Program initiative so that we can develop our program. Is that what I'm understanding now?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I have the resolution in front of me that you considered earlier. It is, we will partner with HACA in the filing of an application for a HUD Choice Neighborhood Planning Grant and contribute $32,000 toward the application filing fee.
But
So
I
this is
wanted
a
to
part
make
of the
sure that
application.
my colleagues knew that there's a second shoe.
There is, and it talks about that in one of the whereas clauses about the future obligation that if this is approved and it moves forward, there could be another $287,000 that we would have to come up with in FY23.
Right.
Well, does this make us eligible for federal monies? I don't understand the grant
Alderman Gay
application if there's no
can probably
grant.
Yeah, so basically what this is doing is allowing us to be eligible for so we're applying for the Choice Neighborhood Grant. And so it opens up that once we start planning for the redevelopment, it'll allow us to apply for higher credits and get assistance along the path of development. It was critical that we partnered with HACA because that's how it's done traditionally. And Melissa sent out a really good presentation, a PowerPoint, and some examples that I can forward to the rest of the council. But yeah, it was critical that we go into a partnership with them as it was needed to move forward for the application. It's us, HACA, and I think two other organizations or individuals who are assisting in this. But Jody is correct. If we are selected, we will have to I think the total cost is like $6 and some change, and we'll split that down the middle. But what comes from that is the opportunity for redevelopment and some really good and creative people to come to the table and help us along this process. And it includes public town halls and just all of these things. It's really starting redevelopment of Eastport Terrace and Harbor House, which is exciting.
So there is a benefit, an option for benefits from this national program.
Definitely, yeah.
It may not be dollars, but in-kind services of some sort or
It
support.
brings experts to the table.
Okay.
And they in turn can attract resources, potentially a large grocery chain or some other kinds of resources to come in and partner. So it is sort of opening up a lot of doors for us. Is there further discussion? Is there a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll move favorable recommendation for FT 821.
Mr. Chair, if I could just read this quick snippet from Melissa really quick, just to clarify some things. So the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development provides funding vehicles to assist communities like Annapolis that are looking to revitalize struggling neighborhoods where distressed public or HUD-assisted housing is located. One of the program's HUD offices, called Choice Neighborhood Initiatives, is intended to facilitate the development of comprehensive approaches to neighborhood development, redevelopment, and growth. HACA, like many housing authorities, has distressed housing that is in need of redevelopment. Building strong community partners is one of the first steps in the process of successfully applying for the federal grant funds and securing other funding sources. So as I just mentioned, it's pretty important that so thank you guys.
Right. All right. So we have a motion. Is there a second? I will second the motion. Is there discussion? Alderman Payon.
Mr. Chair, I realize that this doesn't involve budgeting extra money. It's only a transfer, but I'm not satisfied with what I've heard. It's not that I'm against the getting the initiative money, the grant, by any means, but the $32,000 I think is just a little bit much right now. Thank you.
All right. There was supplemental information that was provided with the resolution that came before the council. I don't have any more information than that.
No, I'm not blaming you, or I'm not comfortable. That's all.
All right. Well, that being the case, all those in favor of recommending favorably FT 8-21 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
All right. The ayes have it. And thank you for planning and zoning for helping us with this. I think we are all going to be good partners as this goes down the road. And I think that it's going to give us a jump start on getting those two communities resuscitated, revitalized, energized, made part of the community, addressing things like food deserts and a lot of good things. So, and I'm sorry, Alderman Gay and I were at the presentation put forth by the organization. There were some very powerful people from across the country there, and I realize you didn't have the benefit of that, or the rest of the council actually, but it was quite impressive. Next item on the agenda is FT 9-21 for Management Information Technology. We have Mr. Paquin here, but Madam Finance Director, could you lead us on the discussion with this?
Yes, this FT is moving some budgetary appropriation authority from salaries and benefits and contractual services in MIT's budget and moving it into the capital outlay category. Most of it is to pay for some additional EnerGov licenses that they need to purchase for the new EnerGov program that they didn't know about originally.
Mr. Paquin, did you want to add anything? Sounds good to me, but all right. Yeah, all right. Is there a motion from the committee?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to give FT 921 a favorable recommendation.
All right.
I'll second that.
All right. Thank you. This is going to make our lives much more comfortable. This company sort of bailed us out from the situation we were in with eTrackIt, and they've got a good reputation, and this is a site license, so we have a higher volume on eTraffic than was anticipated, and this is just going to make it all work much better. Is there any further discussion? Failing that, all those in favor of recommending favorably to FT 9-21, please indicate by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it. Now, we will move to the meat of the agenda. This is a Finance Committee meeting. Hopefully, the last, or at least next to last Finance Committee meeting for this budget exercise. But this is time to meet with all of our colleagues. We've had 2 previous meetings, and they have been quite rich, and I think they have focused on the appropriate level for the council. It was a policy budget dialogue between the council and police, and then in the next meeting, fire and public works and transportation. And this is the last opportunity we have to have a general meeting like this, and it is free form. So the floor is open to any colleague that wants to ask questions, make statements, offer amendments, any kind of information to the council at large. Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again for the opportunity. I had a few things I wanted to discuss. First of all, I guess talking about some of the position changes in terms of adding more civil servants. And then the second question I have is regarding the CIP and potential amendment. So first of all, on the staff issue, in light of the structural deficit or imbalance, whatever you want to call it, I'm still really concerned about some of the staff increases. And in general, I think we should continue to follow that philosophy, which I know we try to each hold ourselves to in terms of, if we want to add something, we find a corresponding cut. And in terms of positions, I think until we get the deficit really ironed out, or at least get a clear plan on how we're going to address that we really need to be careful about adding more staff, and even I think in some cases adding more civil servant staff, because that just compounds the pension issues that we have. So, and I say that because I do think it's good to convert some contractual positions over to civil servant eventually, but in some cases I think it makes sense to have contractual. But in any case, that's kind of background in terms of where I'm coming from, and I do see that some of the departments have followed that philosophy, and I think have found the cuts internally, or essentially redirected funding. Like I know finance department was looking to add a new deputy director position and found, I think you're not filling one position to kind of fund the new one. And I think some other departments may be doing the same thing, but I just wanted to get a clarity, I guess, from the city manager or the departments about where some of the money is coming from. So finance, it's my understanding you're kind of internally shuffling it around. I think planning and zoning is proposing to add a new housing position. Can you clarify how that, I think that also is being funded through internal shufflings.
What was that second thing you just
Planning
said?
and zoning, I think, weren't they proposing to add a housing position? What's the title of it?
Perhaps we
Alderman
could
Gay?
get an enumeration. Some of these are adding new positions, some of them are converting status, and so perhaps we should get an enumeration. Maybe Katie can direct us to the right place, or maybe it's in the city manager's
So
briefing.
This is the HACCA liaison.
Do we have a HACCA liaison coming on?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the one that was required from the settlement that we did.
That's right.
Yeah, my question is just about funding, and thank you, Mr. Chair. That is what I'm just trying to clarify where
I think I first was going to see if you were amenable to the reorganization of the department and adding that position. I don't think we've gotten to the point of how do we fund that position, although I do have a draft job description, but.
Okay. I thought I saw that in the budget, but I will check.
I don't see any changes in their position summary from year to year, so I don't think it's been
It's
allowed.
not proposed because I wasn't sure if it would be accepted by city council.
Okay. I'm just clarifying. What page is the plan and zoning? Anybody have that? Oh, there it is.
May I ask, Alderman, are we on R12 or are you talking about the budget document?
A budget document, basically. Just trying to get clarity on how some of the
Planning
positions
and
are being
zoning
funded.
is on page 67 of the budget binder.
Okay, you're right. I don't see that in the budget. I guess I assumed it was based on an earlier conversation. Okay. Okay, well, that answers my question. Yeah. Yeah, I'll let you take that up. The other question I had, let's see, the other positions, I believe Public Works was looking to add a fleet maintenance, I forget the title, but another fleet maintenance position.
Which position?
Page,
It's a fleet maintenance position.
Yeah, okay.
I'm looking for the Public Works page.
The position summary for fleet maintenance within Public Works doesn't show any changes year to year.
So they just not fill in one position and
No, there's no changes in their position summary at all from year to year. So I'm not sure what it is you're recalling.
do you have the page for the
And
Public
it was
Works?
fleet maintenance and DPW. It wasn't anything for transportation fund.
Oh, that's right. I think it came out of the transportation fund.
So we'll check that one too.
All right, thank you. The other position I wanted to ask about was the community services, because I think that's in the budget as being proposed to get converted in from, it's currently grant funded, contractual, but it's going to be converted into a civil servant. Is that?
Are you talking about the transportation position?
No, the community services position that's currently in the city manager's office.
Yeah, that's the social worker position that's contract now and is being changed to be civil service.
Is that still going to be grant funded?
That was all funded by the city.
It was what?
It was funded by the city.
Okay,
It's
so
not grant funded, it's general fund.
Oh, it's general fund. Okay, so that, were there any corresponding cuts in the reductions or reallocation?
No,
In
that
the-
was
in the office?
It's funded in the current year as a contract employee, and so that amount of funding is going to be transferred over to civil service.
But the current year, though, it's grant funded this year.
No, it's
Contractual.
it's city funded.
I thought we got grant funding for the. We did, that didn't come through.
It is a contractual position, but and being converted to civil service, but it's always been funded with the general fund. For 21, it was added to the budget at the end, the tail end of the process last year to hire a social worker, and we put it in as contractual, and we're just converting it to civil service.
Okay. Well, I when we voted on that, I thought the assumption was we were going to get grant funding for that position. And I think don't get me wrong, I think it's a very worthwhile position, but again, this represents just another increase of our workforce without any kind of corresponding cut. And I know there's a plan to create an actual department or office for community services, which again, I think we need to do, but the question is, how are we going to pay for it? We can't keep adding and adding and adding without figuring out where the money is going to be coming from. We heard from some of the other large departments in the city, and that's why I was kind of pushing to find what kind of programs we can essentially cut from these other larger departments so that we can reallocate that money towards the community services. Because
So
well, that's why I was bringing up some of the questions about the special operations.
I was trying to look, I thought we had, I know I have some materials, but I might not have it here. I thought we were adding 3 new positions and then all the other actions were converting there were people who are already here. We were converting from contractual to a civil service position. I think there's 2 of them in the Office of Emergency Management.
Oh, yes.
I know
Right.
Fire has a fire safety engineer who's under contract, and I'm not sure that's, I mean, the contract is there, whether that's actually an action converted or just proposed by Fire. But I can't find my highlight sheet, so I can't remember. I think it's just 3 positions.
And then
I
there were
can't
2
remember.
others in police that were there were 2
Yeah.
others in police that are also being converted from contract
Right.
employee to civil service.
Right.
And police too, you said? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, this was per the pay plan ordinance or resolution that we were discussing earlier.
Right.
The what plan?
So it's a
Position summary, the pay plan.
the pay plan resolution that goes along with the budget that sets up the new pay scales and the changes in the positions. We just spoke of that either this morning or yesterday's finance committee
It was
meeting.
yesterday.
And that's where all this information came from with the titles and Ms. Hopkins can explain.
So the fiscal impact document will explain how it's funded. The positions in the police department, the crime scene specialist, that position was a crime scene technician was a police ID specialist. That's civil service to civil service. The difference is the title, and then pay study research indicated that it should go up a grade. So that's already funded under the civil service system. The forensic services unit supervisor is a contractual position, currently vacant, but it's a contractual position. And so that is the head of the unit, which is appropriate to have a civil service position supervising civil service staff. So that position is a conversion of the contractual vacancy. The other position of the fire protection engineer that you spoke of is going to be funded because they will move from having a contracted fire protection engineering services arrangement to having a civil service position, and I believe they're also using funds, if I'm not mistaken, from a firefighter. Yeah. So the fire department has already covered the expenses of that position through that. Okay, now I'm working off the top of my head here. The social work care coordinator position that you already spoke of, that is currently contractual, that's moving into civil service, it's general fund monies. They're in the fiscal note. You'll notice that there are additional monies that are associated with the benefit costs.
Okay.
I think I named them all. I'm not sure. Oh, and the OEM, thank you.
Two.
The 2 OEM positions are grant funded, but the idea here is, unlike other grant funded positions that the source of funding comes and goes, or just comes and then doesn't stay for a protracted period of time, that has been a stable source of income for a very long time in OEM. And so the idea there is for retention purposes and for the ability to get quality people who, see the city's investment in them as well as, their investment in us, that by those becoming civil service positions that we'll have a better chance of keeping a stable workforce in emergency management.
Yeah, thank you. And I completely, that makes sense, that argument, the rationale. But it's just, it's how do we balance that with, I'm still not sure this is the right time. I almost think we should have like a moratorium, a freeze on maybe no new civil servant positions, or freeze on conversions to civil service, because it's just, because when I get it, it helps retention, but every time we add or convert, that's again increasing that pension cost, which we have no way out. We have no plan out unless we can negotiate and pass a resolution or something that forces all new hires to be on the state pension plan. And I know that some of these positions are going to be on the state pension plan to begin with, but
we have to be very careful about long-term employment agreements and that situation with the Maryland State Retirement System.
Yeah.
We don't want to look like we have this shadow workforce over here that we have under employment agreements. And of course, that we now have language in the code about the conversion of employment agreements, within the 5-year window. We were on track for converting a lot of our contractual positions. What we had was the council's resolution back when, which was that we were to be looking at the permanent need for these positions over time, and that that was expected that we would be considering them, moving them more permanently into the workforce because they were permanently relied on. And so I hear what you're saying, but I also know that we're talking about critical services, and we're not really pushing to move to expansion for positions that aren't serving a definite and already established need. It's just in a different form that all of them are.
Yeah, well, I'm just wondering because, we have the lingering impacts from COVID, which is why we're carrying over a good portion, or trying to carry over a good portion of the federal money. I just don't think now is the time to be converting all these positions, because I don't think there's anything crucial or urgent about converting these positions now, this year, right? I think we should look at that in the future when we get out of this hole and when we have a plan to address the deficit. But doing it now when it's not a critical action for us to take is just, I don't think it's a wise move. And again, it's not directed at you. It's just generally, I don't think it's a wise move for us to be converting these positions right now. I understand the rationale, but with everything, it just seems a bit irresponsible for us to do that again. At the same time, we're carrying over all these funds for next year because we're expecting to have some difficulty at that time as well.
I do want to say that the last two that were mentioned that are grant funded, that the benefits are grant funded as well. So it's not a question of not having monies from the grant source rather than from the general fund. Just wanted to make that point as well.
Okay. Thank you. So that's all I have on that topic.
All right, let me just, now that I've gotten caught up myself, the information for this is in the staff report that is an attachment to Resolution 12-21. And
the fiscal note as well will help you.
Pardon me?
And the fiscal note will help as well.
And the fiscal note also. So I think you're right in bringing our attention to this. The Finance Committee, after hearing from both the HR director and the city manager, recommended favorably for these actions. Many of them are certainly not immediate cost things. Grant-funded positions many of them are still remaining grant-funded positions. There will be some civil service costs for retirement and things like that, and those do have to be recognized in the budget. As was explained to us by Director Hopkins, the expectation is that the grant funding for these things is longstanding. So while, yes, there is a liability, we have, if the grants run out for some reason, we have civil servants that we're not getting those monies, so they will have to be on the payroll. But there's no expectation that that's going to be happening immediately. And this has been in the works almost from the inception, two of them with the Office of Emergency Management. There's been a gradual progression of everybody but Director Simmons being on grants to slowly but surely we've been bringing people on civil service. And part of the justification, certainly something that has won me over, is this is very important for retention and recruitment. And we have had a lot of people who have come, earned their stripes, and moved on to greener pastures, bigger and better jobs. And while it's nice for us to propagate good staff elsewhere, we'd like to keep some of them for ourselves. So, and then, as I say, the attachments to Resolution 12-21 explain the position in the classifications and explains in the staff report the rationale, and in the fiscal report the fiscal impact. So I think you're right to bring our attention to that, and I think that'll have to be, as the council takes up the resolutions, those will have to be things that we'll have to debate more in full when we're actually voting live. So thank you for that. You had another issue that you wanted to raise.
Well, if somebody else wants to comment on that topic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Alderman Gay.
Thanks. Yeah, I just had a couple of quick questions. Before I get into the positions, this is just another question. When you are creating the grades and things, you have to be aware of the concerns of like pension and all of that stuff, like when going into it, right? And I've heard you say several times, even yesterday you mentioned it, and you kind of made a quick comment back that, we have to, we want the best workers and we always have to, go for the best. And what is it? I get it. Yeah, we do want the best workers, but you think that's the best way is just to start throwing money at them? And can't you don't, but I've asked several times about like training to you. Is that important to you? Like when, bringing people in and training them up and the career ladder, as they mentioned?
Yes, it is. And we are, some of what happens is the funding, in order to do those. We are going to look very carefully. We're already starting to build career ladders. I've already had conversations with the Director of Planning and Zoning and for positions in their department. I've talked to Mike Johnson as well about Public Works. I've had these conversations with Marcia Patrick in the past and David Jarrell when he was in that position. So yes, there is great opportunity for building that I have experience in working for the county, where we created, I guess you could call them career ladders, but they're series where you have the ability to bring people in at an entry level, and they kind of promote in place. So they start out entry, they mature in their job skills and their knowledge and their applied knowledge to journey level, may also end up at a master level. So those are definitely elements that could be built here as well. And along with that is determining what's the appropriate technological or skills training that may be necessary to move through that. And then with those kinds of systems, you want to make sure you're giving people a chance to demonstrate that skill and demonstrate that knowledge, so that it's again, an applied skill and an applied knowledge, that they're getting credit for it and then financial reward for it.
Yeah, that would be, I keep bringing it up, and I think that would be good to see. Obviously, it costs to train too, but I just think that may help with some of the issues that we have. We don't always have to bring somebody in at $280,000 or $180,000 because they said so. So.
And actually, what I wanted to reinforce as well is that many positions here are the result of promotions for people. So the city, in my experience, does promote internally. What you happen to have is certain individuals maybe don't have additional skill sets that get them to outside of the series they're in. So you see public works maintenance workers become public works maintenance worker twos very, very, very often, almost exclusively. And an equipment operator 1 to equipment operator 2 and equipment operator 3. But again, when you're moving into kind of the first level supervision and the like, that's where I think we need to concentrate on the bridge skills.
Yeah.
We need to concentrate on the technological skills, because now you're talking about having a need to do asset management, or that maybe you're having a role in budgeting, or at least managing the funds that you're given for your unit, or that you have supervisory skills, that are also being able to manage performance, manage some other elements that you don't necessarily get at your semi-skilled or lower skilled positions.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where we can do the concentration. I already, after we had that conversation, I've already got quite a number of potential ways to do that through public works associations, through and Lynn Farrow found something through ICMA. So there are potential. And now in this virtual world, one interesting thing that's happened out of the pandemic is you used to have to hire a trainer, pay the expenses of a trainer to come on site to get through a certification program. This great build costs you a lot of money, which is really outside of our ability to pay. But I think our resources are because of a lot of them had to pivot and come up with virtual trainings in order to survive. I think we're going to benefit from that.
So what's the plan? I just have two other quick questions, and I want to just get into this as well. Are you putting that in an amendment, or I know you mentioned you'd like to see a scholarship program or something. So what can you put in this budget to help with that?
First of all, I'd like to see what we can find and what it costs, and that's what we're looking at right now, to see how reasonable and accessible it is, and then how much money that would cost. It would require training dollars in the budget in order to accomplish that.
Okay.
We do need, I didn't mean to cut
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I cut you off.
I was going to say, I think really one of the areas that we really do need to do skills development is really around the technological skills. That a lot of people, they're carrying around a computer in their phone, right? And a lot of people have that level of savvy, but that's not the same level of savvy in being able to keep data in a spreadsheet, or be able to move things through a system that's an electronic system in order to show that next level of ability to go up through the career ladder. So I think that's where we can really put some of our concentration.
I agree with that 100%. And hopefully I can help you. So I'm only aware of one of these positions that is grant funded, which I believe is the Senior Emergency Management Planner. Could you expand on which other ones are grant funded?
That is grant funded as well. That was the one position that got through that was able to be converted from a contractual position before. And so that position was titled Emergency Management Planner, but it's really the senior member of the emergency planners.
And is that the only one that is grant funded on this list of
no,
6?
All of the ones that are for emergency management are grant funded.
Okay.
So the training position, the emergency management planner, and the senior emergency management planner are all OEM positions.
Awesome. And so I think my next questions then would be for police. I'm aware of the fire protection engineer. He's moving a uniformed firefighter to the Office of Planning and Zoning.
No, actually, he's just using the funding from one.
Oh, just the funding? Okay.
Right. And we would hire somebody that has training and is a professional fire protection engineer.
Okay. So that funding's already there. And I'm assuming this forensic service unit supervisor and crime scene investigator funding is already there as well. They're just now bringing somebody in.
Correct. The crime scene technician was called a police ID specialist.
Okay. So my next question then would be for police, because I don't think I'm not trying to say that you don't know, but
I don't know what your question is.
what exactly how would these roles enhance the capabilities of the department? Is this something that we currently don't have? Would this addition, these two roles, enhance our ability to solve crimes and murders? How is this being handled now?
Well, this is kind of like CSI, but the department right now has a vacancy. They do not have somebody in the role of the forensic services supervisor, which was a contractual position. So they're hurting for the skill, and they're hurting for the management of the crime scene unit that I believe you're currently using uniform services to pull that off. And so what you really need and want to have is professionals who are trained very specifically in this field because they're your expert witnesses.
But who's doing it now, though? How's it being taken care of?
Contractually.
I'm sorry, bye.
That's okay.
It's currently being handled contractually. We have a,
Or is your mic on? Is it bright green?
If the light's on, the mic's on.
there we are. So we had an outside contractor previous to this who did consulting and other review work for our previous supervisor. And so he is now handling anything that comes up to that supervisor level, but it's cost prohibitive. And so being able to fill that position will enable us to reduce the cost.
So you're paying premium dollar in order to have somebody at his skill level.
So the contract is cheaper, in your opinion, instead of paying the contract, instead of contracting that out, it's cheaper to hire them and bring on the weight of the pension and all of that stuff?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to see it because I would like to see the crime piece, especially within my ward and in my communities. Forensic services would definitely be appreciated. But I do share the concern of my colleague from Ward 7. And this is not just with police. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring you up like this, but just with the bringing on the baggage of the pension with this stuff. That's our biggest worry, I think. And so to his point, is this something that has to be done this year? Could you set it aside for the next fiscal year?
I'm not sure. I think we should probably just say.
Help is coming.
Yeah, we can. Yeah. So the previous supervisor left APD for another jurisdiction. And we're also, we can get the data to you. I want to say our consultant is, it's somewhere around $100 an hour. Each time he's called out, it's thousands of dollars.
Yeah. So he's not like a it's hourly rate only when an incident happens where he needs to be on the scene.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, but even at that, it's incredibly expensive,
Yeah.
And so we need someone not only supervising the personnel but managing the processes and
and ensuring the staff is up to protocol, is trained, is
yeah, and so they go
chain of
together.
custody.
The unit supervisor will be managing this crime scene investigator. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Previously, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was mentioned that there was some point where the county was coming in to help with something like this. Maybe it was in a completely different area of the department of. But where they were like sharing services, I think with like DNA analysis or something like that. Is that still happening or?
Yeah, so that was one of the previous meetings. Some of our evidence is sent off to whether it's the county police, state police, or private labs for analysis because we do not have the facilities to process at that level.
Okay.
So, and I don't see that going away. But we'll definitely be able to handle more internally with the forensic services unit supervisor position.
So, and this is again just me throwing this question out here. What if we were to just do one this year, maybe one next year, like bringing the forensic service unit supervisor, allow him to get in that role, and I guess just establishes himself in that, or him or herself, excuse me, in that role. Is that something that the department would be open to, or?
We currently have a sworn personnel handling what's coming through our forensic services unit. And so bringing in the crime scene investigator, which, as Director Hopkins mentioned, was basically just a renaming of the position. There is a grade increase, but that's mostly there, 90%
Okay.
there.
It's already.
Yeah, the semis are. Okay.
Yeah.
So really so we're just bumping up this forensic to another grade increase. So the only new thing would be the crime scene investigator.
No, other way around.
Oh, so the only new person would be the forensic unit supervisor. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you already have the crime scene investigator. We need the crime supervisor. Okay, dang it. Well, I'm open to, I don't know, Ross. I mean, Alderman Savage. I don't know. What's your thoughts on it?
I don't know. I mean, you've got, looking at the staff report, the fiscal impact note, the actual costs associated with these, it looks like there's 6 positions being converted in some way or another. The actual cost increase isn't too much, except for the forensic services unit supervisor, just $32,000 extra. But otherwise, it's like $5,000. I think the larger point, which I've tried to speak to, is just the whole idea of doing it now during the when we're having challenges, and just the need to get these larger issues under control before we expand.
I also wanted to point out that we had 2 crime scene investigator positions, and one of those positions we gave up to fund partially this forensic services unit supervisor position in order to, alleviate some of the cost as much as we could.
Yeah.
So that's already a one for one trade-off.
Yeah, I see that the fire did that as well. So yeah, thank you for that. I'm glad to see that.
And did we mention the fact that the contract supervisor supervises civil service employees? You mentioned that already.
I did.
Okay, because that's a problem that we need to resolve. Having a contractor
that's always a
supervise civil
challenge,
service.
because then you don't really have the same kind of controls, and if they're dealing with performance concerns or they're dealing with disciplinary matters, it's just really a challenge to have a contractual person in charge of civil service jobs.
Okay.
Yeah, and and just again, I didn't want to seem like I was singling out the police department at all. But I talked to a friend today who has some experience with the budget process with this city. We talked at length, and I definitely was put to ease with with having that conversation, realizing that we are, things are being worked out. I'm definitely panicked because I understand the pension concerns and obviously the salary and the number of employees that we have. Like, that's what everybody's talking about. And so I definitely understand that the finance department has done a really good job of just trying to put together a sound budget and give us some direction. As you can see, that's always the only concern that we have, is just the employment and the pension concerns and all that stuff, which can be addressed over the course of the next couple of years with the negotiations coming up. And so that would give us wiggle room. I think to the point that Alderman Savage is making, and I'll just say this in closing, is that, and this what I closed in a conversation I had earlier today, my only concern still is that we have this attitude of like, we got it right this year, thank God, because of the federal money. But I'm just afraid that if we don't start the actual process of getting it done, we'll be lost. And I think we've been saying that throughout the entire budget process. But I trust that you have put us on the right track and that this will be helpful. So thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
So Alderman Payon has a comment, and I have one too.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to go back to the forensic services supervisor and the crime scene investigator. I've got to tell you that, let me put this in the layman's terms. Those positions are absolutely essential. They cannot solve cases without them. These are the people who go in, organize the crime scene, decide what needs to be taped off what doesn't. They pick up anything that might be potentially be pieces of evidence, but perhaps at times, more importantly, those are the fingerprint techs that come in. They take fingerprints off of everything. They take blood samples if there's blood is involved. They make sure that the chain of custody is established and maintained, without which, these are technical things, but without which that case cannot be won when it comes to court.
Is that why we haven't solved any crimes?
I'm sorry?
Is that why we haven't solved, well, not crimes, murders in particular?
Well, I can't answer why we haven't solved a number of the crimes.
That's what you're insinuating to.
I think I'm led to believe that's more that people won't come forward and testify. But having said that, this is what gets us wins. These are the unsung heroes of a criminal prosecution. I think most of you are familiar with my background, and I worked with evidence collection technicians, is what we called them at the time, extensively from the Annapolis Police Department. And a talented evidence tech will pull a case out of the fire many times. They don't necessarily, as a matter of fact, they hardly ever do the DNA examination itself, but they wrap everything up. They keep the chain of custody. They'll deliver that sample to whoever is doing the DNA, be it the Maryland State Police or be it a private company. They'll go pick it up when they're finished with it, again, maintaining the chain of custody. If any of that stuff is out of order, well, I'm not going to say that that evidence isn't going to come in and be considered, but there's a good chance it won't be. It's got to be done properly. These are highly trained, highly skilled people. You can get a bachelor's, you can get a master's in forensic technology. That doesn't mean you've been out to a crime scene and know exactly how to handle things, but it does mean you've got the knowledge, extensive knowledge on the subject. I don't know how the city police, I don't know if they need these folks. I don't know if they have 10 of them sitting around doing nothing all day. I highly doubt that. But there is no question that for any police department worth its salt is going to have an excellent evidence collection unit, which would include forensic services and crime scene investigators. That is something they cannot do without. If they need, if we do need to spend money by and large without knowing the personality, but at least on paper, that's money well spent.
Thank you, Alderman. As a layperson, I'm impressed with what Alderman Deon just said. But for me, I think anything we can do to disencumber our sworn officers so they're out doing their job and also getting satisfaction from doing their job is something that we really ought to applaud. I would like to ask my colleagues, I think this is a very good dialogue, and I'm glad we're having the time to do it here rather than the crunch of passing the budget. But I'm wondering, our 1221 will be coming up, and these actions are in there. So I'm trying to look for something that's sort of closing the loop. I understand the warning about caution. Is this the time to do it? And I think that's not so much do we need these services, but are we making these conversions in an inappropriate time? And I think we can have that dialogue, but I want to check with my colleagues. We're not questioning the need to have these kinds of services. It's whether we should pull the trigger to make them more permanent and bear, in the one case, $32,000, a pretty significant load. The others are 5 and 6, but 5 and 6 here and there adds up. So every time we do these conversions from contract and it has these overhead costs, we are adding to the budget. So Alderman Savington, Alderman Gay.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I don't doubt the need. I guess one of the other things that to provide context is I will be introducing a resolution at some point. It's already drafted, but I'm trying to refine it. Looking at reimagining, just as an example, reimagining our police force. I'll probably do the same thing with fire and maybe even transportation, or something similar. But for now, the police. The point is, if we actually do this, and I know it's been mentioned by others about doing something kind of like this, it's modeled off of what was done in Montgomery County. They had a huge effort with consultants involved and a large task force. But the point is, if we actually do go through that and that passes, and we have this effort, what if that task force does come back and say, yes, we need to reimagine our policing, shuffle around programs, resources, and what if it says, yes, we are such a small jurisdiction, we should be offloading some duties to the county? Because again, just looking at Bowie as an example, they've partnered with Prince George's County Police to provide investigative services for all major crimes, as well as technical evidence in the area of drug analysis, fingerprint identification, special operations such as helicopter, hostage, K9. So that's where I'm saying, if we convert these positions to civil servant, it's going to be much more difficult to actually make this shift. And so that's one thing I think, one reason I think we should be cautious about converting all these. I don't doubt the need, but if we've been working just fine as a consultant, a contractor, I think we could do that, continue to do that for another year or two. Because again, these are the big questions. If we're serious about getting out of this deficit, these are the big questions we need to be looking at, is the restructuring. And I know we've kind of talked about this for years, but I think now with everything coming at a head, it's a good time to kind of do this. And just another larger to frame this is, looking at the budget, every year it is, let's add this position for this or that. And, we're hearing from the departments, we're running out of space, right? And not to pick on anyone, but, that came from the finance office and it's come from the law office, right? Running out of space. Well, again, if you look at the history, that's because a lot of our departments have grown. Not all of them. Public Works has shrunk, I think, because we privatized trash, but a lot of them have grown like crazy over the past 10, 20 years. And so I think that's the reason why our deficit's been growing. So I think we need to, it's just symptomatic. We can't keep growing. We need to, where are we going to put people? We don't have enough building space. And we've already added some buildings. So I guess that's just the larger question that I'm uncomfortable with until we have a plan to really.
So before I turn to you, Alderman Gay, I want to pick up on that point, the reimagining point. And I was just rereading a paper from Al Kirshner, and it was talking about firefighting in the 50s and 60s to current, where suppression has been supplanted to responding to emergencies. And so now, and we heard from fire that 70% is responding to emergency needs, 30% suppression. But that suppression is still there. Even though it's only 30%, you still need to have the staff and the vehicles ready. There are fewer fires, but when there's a fire. So, I'm trying to figure out, how do we make this transition? If we're reimagining policing to go from arrest to assist, and we were talking about all of these addressing the social issues that are behind the crime and how we need to address that if we want to really stop the crime, change that whole curve. But at the same time, we still need to there will be crime and there will be need to do the crime scene evidence measures and those sorts of things. So we're in a very dynamic world, and we're kind of on the cusp. Fire's already sort of made their transition. I think police, the arguments we were making when we met with police the evening where we kept Chief Jackson busy for 3 hours, we were trying to say, and we said it to Rhonda McCoy too, yeah, we understand needs and wants, but part of the needs, we think, also needs to start changing now. We really do need to think about different kinds of police officers or what a sworn officer means. And we're only at the beginning of that. And my suspicion is it's going to cost us more for a while to make the transition rather than less. It's almost like the reverse of a J curve in investment circles. In order to make this transition, you have to keep going with what you're doing while you're making that transition and then move those resources over there. So I'm not sure that there's budget relief for us out of all of that talk, but I am glad that we're talking about it. These are realistic things that we as budgeteers and policymakers need to face up to make that transition to get to that new state. May cost us more, may cost us more people, more dollars, and take time. So it's a dilemma. We have a tough job. Anyway, Alderman Gay, you wanted to make some comments.
Yeah, thanks. I'll pick up on what you said, but let's just go back to Fred's point. You reminded me of one of my criminal justice professors just now, the way you was talking. His name was Anthony Smoot. He looked just like you as well, and he would go on and on. He was a prosecutor in the Eastern Shore, though. But I think to your point, that's what I'm concerned about. And that's why I mentioned to him, like, I would really like to see this if it would help. If you believe that by bringing in these positions, we'd be more efficient at solving crime, in particular murders, I am 100% for it. But I think, again, there has to be proof in that. If this person that we are contracting with is capable of doing it, the job, I think that, especially the fact that it's hourly, let's hope that we never have to call him, you know? And so that's what I'm looking at from that lens. But I'm not in your shoes, so I don't know what it is like when somebody gets shot and you have to rush to the scene and you're calling in this person on a contractual basis to help solve this issue. And by the way, I did sign up for the ride along, and I'm hoping to go in the next week. I sent him some dates. I'm really excited about it. I'm going to try to do the same for fire too. But yeah, I want to see what it is like, because we are making these decisions, and to be here with no clue what the hell it's like when a person is shooting at you or you got to walk up to a car. So I want to, have that experience, and I want to give you the benefit of the doubt to say, this is what it's like when this happens, and this is why we need these positions. Because I don't know.
Yeah. To your point about bringing him in hourly, the problem with that is that he's not on a daily basis overseeing everything that's going on in our unit. And so he does have constant contact with the people, with the officer that works in that unit, who also communicates with crime scene certified officers who work in different units within the department and may be on call to come in when they're needed. But having someone in there on a daily basis, making sure that everything is going, as Alderman Payon mentioned, the way, up to industry standards. And I want to say over the past, 5 to 7 years, we've had 3 people, I think, come through that position. And some of them, the most recent one was a young woman who came in with good, a master's degree, good credentials and certifications, but once we ended up having to move her into a contractual position because the civil service position was one of those crime scene investigator positions that she was at that point overqualified for. So the hope was to be able to get that converted before now, and that didn't happen. And so she moved on to a department that was able to offer a civil service position and the security that comes with it. And I think we're going to have a really uphill battle getting someone in on a contractual position for any length of time, if we're able to get someone in at all, because that's what people are looking
You're
for.
talking about a career commitment.
Yeah, and this is
That's the forensic
salary
services unit.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
That's the forensic services unit supervisor position I'm talking about.
Is that salary as advertised? You think is like other jurisdictions around us, similar to?
Well, I did that study.
Okay, cool. So I think I'm good there. I think it's going to be a budget problem, but we need it. I mean, I want to see the crime solved. To your point, though, Alderman Arnett, why are you of the belief, and I believe based on the staff report from the peace legislation, the police department is of the belief, too, that if we were to reimagine the police department, if we go into this community-based policing, that it would all of a sudden bloat the budget. When what we could potentially do is what we've seen all of these departments do is just hold a vacancy, retitle the position, change the job description, and brings people in based off of her research and what she thinks is appropriate. I don't think necessarily that you would have to raise the budget 1 cent to reimagine policing. It's just literally just changing out pieces and, okay, this position is vacant. Let's take that money, put it over here on the side. We'll save it, rename the position, bop.
So I admire your youthful enthusiasm, but I've never seen it work that way. Sorry.
Where have you seen it work?
I have been part of reorganizations in the federal government in my career. And you always need to continue carrying on the things that are doing, like in fire. You're still going to be needing to do suppression, even though you're now moving to all of the other kinds of things, and suppression is only 30% of your calls for services. That need is still there. It hasn't gone away.
But what would be eliminated, though?
Policing is really more complicated because we're now thinking about not just go out, find them, arrest them, throw them in the clink. Now we're talking about we want to figure out what we can do to not arrest, but to say, gee, we don't want to give you a record. We want to help you. We're not going to give you the record. We're going to give you some kind of program. And that program is going to help you work your way out of the rut that you're in, this situation you're in. Those are really much tougher things, and it takes a different kind of mindset on the part of the officers. I'll tell you, in personal experience, when I was working on the Clinton healthcare reform, Tipper Gore wanted to bring in mental health coverage under the Clinton plan, and that broke the bank. Remember, Clinton was saying, we're going to give you better health care for the same costs. Well, when you bring in mental health, that what we're talking about here in terms of addressing social situations, social backgrounds, is akin to mental health. That is very expensive, and it takes a different kind of officer and a different kind of desire to serve to do that. But we still are going to have to do normal policing. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not an expert. They are. I'm just saying my supposition is, as we change the vision, we change the goal, we're going to have some of the same things going on while we're moving to these new increments. We could get very lucky, and it could all just go very smoothly.
Well,
haven't seen that happen.
Just,
Alderman
okay,
Thank
go ahead.
you.
Yeah, go.
Alderman Gay, young man, bingo. What you said is the problem that many taxpayers have with paying taxes. It's not the amount that they pay. Some cases it is, but it's how we spend it. And the police struggle with trying to put the right amount of money in the right place. And I mean, if you talk to people, if it costs $20 million to keep the streets safe, they're willing to pay it as long as it's going to the right things. You mentioned before, you asked before rhetorically, will getting good forensic personnel help solve murder cases? I mean, will it, in and of itself, will it do that? Well, my answer to that is I tried 3 cases that I think I tried 3 where The only real evidence was DNA evidence. And in one case, at least one of those cases, that's all we had. I mean, no identification, no confession, no fingerprints. I mean, you name all the things you would want as a prosecutor, we didn't have them. And I lost it. In retrospect, I think I gave up, and I probably could and should have won it. The other two cases, I have very slight other evidence, and we were able to win. I say it's a team when you prosecute a case, and we were able to do that. So the short answer is yes, it can. And to me, if it solves one case, it's worth the $100,000 or whatever it is that we paid. It's unusual that you have a case like that where that's all you have. But the short answer is yes, we can. I really like some of the things you said about moving the money around, and it's not just the police department. Frankly, it's every department that we whose budget we review. We've got to make sure the money is going to what we think is the priority. Hopefully it matches pretty much what the department thinks are the priorities. But there are lots of places, I'm sure, where employees could be doing more. There are lots of probably even more cases where the employees are doing more than they ought to have to do. And that's what, that's the mystery that we try to, the key that we try to unlock. Some of us think that we spend too much money, period. Some of us don't get too far year in and year out at budget time with that mentality, but it's you're looking at the right things.
So, because I'm going to need to manage our time, but and Alderman Savage got the floor first, and he has another question. And look at how much time we spent. I don't regret this time because I think while it's police sitting front and center right now, these are the kinds of issues that cut across all departments, as Alderman Payon just said. We had a dialogue with Dr. Dua about the changing transportation system, and I think we are going to be entering a new era in transportation with the self-driving cars and the automated cars, and this whole notion of can we continue to be a city running a bus system when what we really need is to be in a regional system. So with some trepidation, because I know Alderwoman Tierney wants to speak and Alderman Gay wants to speak, and he's in front, but what was your other question, Alderman Savage?
Well, I think this is a lot quicker. It's about a specific idea for an amendment. It is a question, I guess, about the CIP. So on page 19 of the CIP, it's called, I'm sorry, that's the wrong page. Where'd it go? Page 18 of the CIP. It's titled City Facility Security Upgrades. And it talks about Homeland Security grant that was sought for but not achieved. And it mentions it's a bit vague, to be just frank, because we don't have too much time. It talks about project may include things as building hardening, improved security, monitoring its system, more robust personnel protection. I'm curious about more about what that is. I heard it might have more to do with camera upgrades. But the reason I bring this up is because FY22, it's $1 million in bonds. And for me, while I have no doubt that security is something that's needed, we at least have existing security. And what I hear about in my ward is people want sidewalks. We have areas that don't have any kind of sidewalks down Edgewood Road, and we're putting more and more improvements down there with the crab facility. We have Annapolis Sailing School at the end, all these marinas we're learning about in the WMI, the Maritime Industrial Zone. We need a way for people to get down there. I have folks, even the seniors who live in Bay Woods, they want to be able to walk over to the park, Moyer Park. They want to walk down to the sailing school, down to Crab, because they will be using Crab, and there's no sidewalk down there. There's an area across from on Bay Ridge Avenue where it hits Forest Drive near the Exxon and that church there. There's no sidewalk on that side of the street. I've had requests to get that installed. So my point is, I think my constituents and I would rather see some money. We'd like some money set aside for new sidewalk installations. And that's what I hear about more than just security, because again, we have some security apparatus in place. I'd really like to get some funding. If there's another way that we can get that funded, and ultimately, I know we've talked about getting impact fees put in place, but I think bonds would be a good source of, so maybe we don't even need to, I don't think I need $1 million to put in sidewalks in Ward 7. I'm sure there are other instances in other wards where, maybe not Ward 1, where you need more sidewalks, but it's probably only $200,000, if that, needed to pay for new sidewalks. So that's the one amendment idea I had, at least specifically that I wanted to bring up, but I wanted to get more information about what that CIP is.
So the facility security upgrades we started last year, and we thought that we would put a certain amount in each year to help improve the security of facilities. The $1 million that's in for this year is for the security cameras that are scattered throughout the city that the police use to help solve crimes. The system that we have now is beyond its useful life. So not only is it old and hard to maintain, but it's old technology that is very poor resolution, poor quality. So it's going to take a one-time investment, and we put it all in 1 year to upgrade those security systems, those camera systems throughout the city. When we had the shootings last summer, we found that we need a better system of cameras. So that's a one-time infusion of money to take care of those. Those cameras are about 10 to 15 years old. So, for camera technology, that's really old. So those really need to be done. We plan to continue to invest about $100,000 per year into our facilities. And so that's for things like some of the things that we've done here in City Hall, and eventually to move the main entrance to the back door and close off the front door. That's a much more secure entrance to the building. As far as sidewalks go, we really need to change the city code to address that, because right now, all that the city is responsible for is for the repair or replacement of existing sidewalks that are in bad condition. The installation of new sidewalks is the responsibility of the adjacent property owner. So that can be changed, but if we do change that, just know that that's a huge financial liability that we're taking on, because there's a demand for infill sidewalks all over the city. It's in every single ward, and it's in a lot of different areas. We've been dealing with this situation for a few years, and I think if the council wants to do that, then that would be the step process, is to change the code first, so the city would take on responsibility for replacement sidewalks, and then we would put in the CIP funding each year to do replacement or to do new infill sidewalks like we do with the other sidewalks. We do $600,000 per year for the replacement sidewalks, because that is a city responsibility, but we don't fund infill because that's really the adjacent property owner's responsibility.
Well, maybe we could have another more detailed conversation about this offline with the city attorney.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Because my reading of the code is that I know we have no mechanism currently in place to fund new sidewalks, and I know currently responsibility for new sidewalks is on the homeowner, but I don't think there's, at least my reading, there wasn't anything that prohibits us from installing that. And we may need to, assuming we don't have right of way already, we may need to spend some money to get easements from the property owners. But we have something in here to improve Cedar Park, right? I know they're not new sidewalks, but we're adjusting something on Cedar Park for sidewalks. Kind of like we do with stormwater, right? We put in new stormwater. It's on our dime unless it's a new construction project. But these are right along a public amenity, public street. I think we really need to find a way. So my point is, I guess, if there's nothing prohibiting us from doing this, even if we need to change the code down the line, I don't think there's anything prohibiting us. Can't we theoretically use some of this bond money to install new sidewalks? So that's kind of the question I'd like to get at.
Yeah, absolutely. We can issue bonds. Those are long life facilities, so absolutely bonds are an appropriate use. That way you spread the cost of those over, the life of the asset, so that could be used. But yeah, I think we should have, and I'm not sure that City Attorney Lyles has looked into this matter yet, but I think it'd be good to allow them to look into it and provide an opinion.
Okay, and maybe we could do a sit down at some point, three of us to talk more about the code part of it. But for this budget, though, I mean, could we just phase out these camera improvements a little bit so we can have some money to go towards new I don't know if anybody else has burning desire for new sidewalks, but this is a public safety issue when you're having 80-year-old residents walking down Edgewood Road or Bemba Beach Road with no sidewalks, and they're walking through Elmore Park with no lights and no improved sidewalk there. So it is a public safety concern. We need to find a solution. And I'm just asking for sidewalk isn't too incredibly expensive.
Can I interject with
yes.
another potential solution? We keep talking about wanting to have impact fees, and we keep talking about developments like the Eastport Shopping Center where there is no room for recreational facility. It just can't be done. But maybe if we can change the code so that the developer can put in new sidewalks. And I agree with you, City Manager Gerald, that increases our liability down the road. But as an alternative to mitigation in terms of not being able to meet adequate public facilities, a mitigation could be that we have a high priority area where sidewalks are needed. I agree they're public safety issues and their quality of life issues. When I see mothers in my neighborhood with their carriages out in the street because the sidewalks aren't there or they're blocked by a telephone pole, that's not good. But so maybe we can have a more of a flexibility in our APF mitigation or these other things that we can have developers who are already in the business of putting in sidewalks. Just say, okay, we need X number of feet of sidewalks over on Edgewood Road. So we can give you an allowance here if you'll do that for us there. So, but that is primarily a legislative issue. And again, we are adding then to our liability because homeowners don't fix their sidewalks, and even when they do, like I did once, they don't do it to specifications. So I didn't put the rebar in. So anyway, but I think I think sidewalks, potholes, traffic, sidewalks are the issues that are on the phone every day. So I think we all face that.
Well, just real quick on that, because I think the other liability you have to look at is if people are walking down the road, our road without a sidewalk, we're going to be liable that way.
Right.
And there's probably more likelihood of some kind of case coming against us versus a sidewalk.
Right. Well, that was short. Alderman Gay was next, and
If I could just add one thing, just to complete that conversation. So I think the sidewalks are an issue that we need to work out, but I would just encourage that we don't cut the funding for the cameras. That's an urgent need, and that's a real public safety issue of helping us solve the shootings, the cameras.
right.
Thank you.
I think that's right. Alderman Gay.
Yeah, thanks. Couple of quick questions in regards to some things in the budget. On page 98 under water fund budget summary, what is $8,500 for dirt disposal? Page 98, it's under fiscal year 22 contractual services breakdown. It says $8,500 for dirt disposal.
We're in the binder.
Yeah, in the binder.
the
Yep,
CIP.
page 98. Yep.
It's under contract services breakdown. By the way, I got a hung jury in that case. I didn't lose it.
Is this a general fund? I was going to suggest we have Public Works come to the microphone and talk about that. I'm just trying to figure out which division it's in. It's in the water fund? Okay.
If the light's on, the
Okay,
mic's
it's
on.
That is for poor soil that is taken out of a trench when a water line might be replaced and you dig in the street. That's, they call it dirt disposal, but it's just the whatever has been put in the street, and we have to dispose of that. And there's a cost to dispose of that poor soil.
Where do they take it?
We take it to a place in South County. I believe there's a disposal site, and we pay a fee every time we take some.
Is this a one-time cost or?
No, it's every time they dig something up. And so that's the total. What you're looking at is the estimated cost for the entire year.
So we can't use our trucks, that public works trucks, they can't load them up with the dirt and drive them?
That's what they do. That's the cost. It's similar to a trash disposal cost, but it's a poor soil disposal cost.
But if our employees are doing it, then why do we have it under contractual services then?
Because
are you saying that the person who owns the place that we dump it requires us to pay a fee when we put it there?
Okay, thank you. That makes perfect sense. So we're just paying like an entrance fee to dump our dirt.
Correct.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
I did have a question as it related to the conversation that we were having previously. One thing for both police and fire that I'm interested in, where I would actually be interested in investing more money into the departments. What are we doing? Because Tricia mentioned several times too, we're moving into this new phase of technology and being able to use, these really great inventions and modern approaches to help with some of the issues that we face in both police and fire, and that could potentially cut costs, moving forward. So where do we stand at like bringing in some of the, the tech help and stuff? I'm seeing New York City police, they have a little robot dog. It's a dog that is a robot, and it's going in the houses and stuff. So like, where do we stand with stuff like that? I'm serious. And it takes a person off the street, somebody controlling it, obviously, but like they use it for fire and everything. Like if you imagine you got to go into Watergate, instead of sending an officer, a firefighter up there, you could send this robot up there, and it could, where do we stand with stuff like that? Potential investments into technology. I know I talked a lot about with the chief, potential investments into maybe like a social media analyst or something, where a lot of today you can look on internet and see the crime before it even occurs. I mean, where's stuff like that?
Who are you asking?
I guess I'm anybody from fire and police.
I think we all want technology. I know you spoke about the hub. I would imagine the cost of the hub is probably more than what we want to pay here. I'm pretty sure it's pretty expensive. When I look at, they just scrapped it up. Well, just right there. Oh, yeah, okay. And then fight will go. So the cost was $94,000. Okay. That's a person. Right. And then there's technology to go with that. Mm-hmm. We're not New York City to have some of the issues. And so we all for technology. One of the things that we do have, and we'll get into that later, we do have this technology. Mm-hmm. We use that for a number of reasons, not just law enforcement. But there's a...
Excuse me, Mr. Branford, can you turn your mic on, please? Thank you.
Can you hear me now? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we do have a drone, and we use that for a lot of different things. But I think when you start talking about adding things to the police department, technology, Annapolis is unique, especially when it comes to policing. And I think what you should do is be evidence-based on what you're asking for, because if you look at some of the things that we're facing in the city as far as crime is concerned and the response for police, I think you need to get down to the numbers and see what type of police department you have. Because I think once you look at those numbers and the trends of certain things, I think you would be satisfied. And I get some of the nuances as it pertains to policing, reforming, and things like that. I just want to make sure that whatever we do, as far as policing is concerned, is that it's curtailed strictly for Annapolis and not look like every other agency.
Yeah, definitely. I will agree with that 100%. Even look like what would work best for us. But I could imagine, I mean, I'm sure there would be some sort of technology that would, I have to look at the numbers, like as you suggested, and see what crime takes place most often and how, what resources best helps with that. But that was just a question. And then my second question for police before you talk, Deputy Chief Spriggs, I'm sorry. The social media analysis, or who's handling that? And I don't want to get too much into, the operations of it because this is a budget thing, but is that something that needs to be financed or?
So we have an intel unit that does that. We also use state resources, MCAT for one, especially if there's an event. We do share intelligence across agencies, especially within the area. So it's not something we solely do ourselves, but we do look at things like that. And it's crime-related issues. We don't look at people's social media accounts just to look at it. And we only look at what's public.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. I appreciate that very much.
Good afternoon. So from the fire standpoint, well, I cannot agree more with Major Branford. We also embrace technology. Anything that we can do to better ourselves in the fire service, we try and accomplish. Some of those things that we utilize, for instance, are things called thermal imaging cameras, which are things that we use to look into walls without having to break them open.
Wow.
To determine whether there's heat behind the walls, which would in fact let us know that there's a fire behind the walls. So every piece of apparatus that we staff has those thermal imaging cameras. We've installed AVLs, or automatic vehicle locators, on all of our apparatus. And I believe the police department had the same thing.
We have the same.
So that it in fact sends the closest unit to a call, regardless of where the call is. And those AVLs, which is a short, it's what we call them, but they're automatic vehicle locators. They're actually linked in with the county's system as well, so that if there's a county unit that's closer, those county units will be sent to calls in the city.
Call automatically?
Automatic.
Wow.
And so that's just a quick example of some of the technology that we are utilizing in the fire service.
That's really cool. And I'm glad that you guys both, because I didn't know. That's great to know, though. That's probably why we have a fast response time. Thank you, though. That was all for those two questions for police and fire. I appreciate that. I did want to talk a little bit about some of my amendments as the time is running down. Not going to drop a lot on y'all, though. Got to still have the element of surprise.
Surprise goes both ways.
The CIP, he mentioned that, he was talking about it briefly. I am really interested in having dollars added for a number of studies. And so I'll get into both of them, but I'm curious to get some responses from my colleagues and stuff. The first being, I would really like to see a study done, and I put it down, and I hope to have it in amendment form to look at the feasibility of a dirt bike park in the city. There were 11 in the county, but as of 2011, they were closed because of, I think that was Hurricane Sandy in 2011, and there was legitimate environmental damage done. And so they closed them. There is no facility in the county now. The closest one is across the bridge, I think just past Kent Island. And so they have these facilities. The county had it. You pay a fee, $54. You have to have a registered vehicle and all of this stuff. Depending on the group, if you had a four-wheeler, you paid $100, whatever. But the purpose is that it was creating a recreational opportunity and creating some revenue. And so I thought of this when Travis Pastrana came because of the hype that it created within the city. And then I also thought of it because people are always complaining about the dirt bikes and stuff in the city of Annapolis that we have, especially on President Street. They tear President Street up. And so my point, instead of just complaining, I'm like, well, what can we do to create a solution? And so this is just, again, I think I'm interested in seeing the research so we can see how feasible this actually is. but I think it would be good, and it would create revenue, and we need something fun to do in the city, you know? So that's one thing. I'm open to hear some responses from that. Should I move on into my next one, or does anybody? Okay.
I think we have Alderwoman Finlayson and Alderman Savage responding.
I do have a question, and I would call on one of their officers to clarify, or the chief, I'm sorry, sitting over there, and the deputy. Are dirt bikes legal in the city? And I asked the question as he's coming up, because a few years ago, my nephews had dirt bikes, and one was stolen. And they had it at the police department, and I sent him down there to get it, and then I sent him promptly over to the Department of Motor Vehicles to get proper licensing. And he came back and told me that they don't offer licenses for dirt bikes.
And that is correct.
That changed?
No, so that is correct. Dirt bike is considered an off-road vehicle. It's got to have certain safety equipment on it in order for you to legally drive it on the street. If you look at most dirt bikes, they don't have turn signals, stop lights, any of those things. So it will be illegal to ride on a city street.
So that means something else would have to happen in order to have a legal facility in the city.
Well, you would just, I mean, yeah, he's right about that. They are illegal to ride on the street, but you can, I've had dirt bikes and four-wheelers. I own the Raptor 250. I love riding. You can have a four-wheeler or a dirt bike legally in the state of Maryland. It has to be registered, and you can take it to places like Coca-Cola that was off of Route 3 and stuff like that, unless something has changed since 2012, 13. Is that new? You can't even have it recreationally?
No, you can have it recreational
yeah.
where you go to, I don't know of any park that they legally have where you can ride one of those bikes. Baltimore City wrestled with this for a long time, and they also looked at ideas of having a park where people can legally go ride it. The problem is liability. It was the insurance factor. If you get someone who was injured in one of those parks, what was the liability to the city if the city sponsored such a park?
And I think that's where the research comes in. Absolutely.
So it can be trailered to one of these facilities. Is that how you?
Yes.
Okay. So more research has to be done.
Yeah, and to the point that you made with Baltimore City and stuff, and because the public doesn't know this, and I just seen this on a thread the other day. Just correct me if I'm wrong. The reason that when they're on President Street and all that stuff, it is illegal for the police to chase them, correct? Because of the crash incidents in the past and stuff. That's why.
I think most police department, I think we have it here. We have a no chase policy. That's even for vehicles.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you so much again. I think somebody else said it, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Alderman Savage, and I really do need to get to Alderwoman Turner.
Quick. I mean, I've mentioned to you before. I grew up dirt biking, probably over 20 years. I've done that, but I also mountain bike, and I'm just some of the challenges, like was mentioned, trailering. Like how would you get the bike? Because like I said, dirt bikes are not street legal. How do you get them to the site, the facility, especially if they're outside, not near centralized? So I think mountain bikes would be better. We do have already some of those facilities out at the waterworks. Because for dirt bikes, you'd have to make something a bit more robust than mountain bike trails. But they're easier to transport. Maybe when and plus there will be that trail for people to get down there on their own. But maybe we could get some more transit vehicles that can carry multiple bikes. So if somebody wants to go, they can make an appointment or something and get them transported. But I'm open to it.
And I think that's a good idea too. But I'll tell you, like I told Gavin when he took me out Waterworks Park, which was a fun ride, by the way. I said, "How many people out here do you see that look like me?" I was the only one. We weren't mountain biking. Not to say that black people don't mountain bike, because I'm sure plenty of them do, but it's not really, our first thing.
Hey, now, you had an electric assisted
I
bike,
did have
right?
the electric
So what's the
assisted one.
difference
Yeah.
between an electric assisted bike and an electric motorcycle?
Well, I'll explain
Just
it.
the size of the tire, really.
Exactly, in the thrust and the speed and stuff. And I'll explain it in the way that I explained it to a couple of constituents. When the pickleball crew wanted pickleball, we created pickleball. When the tennis crew wanted tennis, we created tennis. This is a recreational activity that people enjoy. And so the least we could do is look into it. I mean, we cave on everybody else's request for recreational activities. You know, we are the boating capital of the world, which is a recreational activity. And so, you know, I just think it's worth to look into. But I value Waterworks Park, and I do enjoy, with the electric assisted bike, a nice ride. Should I move to the next one or okay. So I'll drop the big one on everybody. What I passed out to my colleagues is a report from the Stockton or it's titled Stockton Economic Empowerment Demonstration. SEED for short, AKA. It's from Stockton, California. And what we have talked about on this council is investing into social issues, assisting our constituencies, and really trying to, you know, better the lives of so many people in the city of Annapolis. Realizing that poverty is a real thing in this city for so many, not just in, you know, public housing in Ward 6. So what this program is UBI. For those who don't know what UBI is, that's Universal Basic Income. And it's becoming a popular thing across the country. I gave my colleagues a report. It's a 25-page report of a pilot program done in Stockton, California, where they chose 100 families, and each family was given $500 a month for a year. And the results and how that helped those families was ridiculous. And it's here in this report. And so there were qualifications, obviously. You had to be employed. This is not a free handout. You have to be employed. I think you had to be eligible. It was 30% below average median income, I believe, AMI, 30 or 50. But basically what the program does is just stands to help with immediate cost and need. If you're in Ward 6 or if you're anywhere in Eastport, you're in a certified food desert. There's no grocery store within a mile. And according to the study, Poverty Amongst Plenty, that's a verified food desert. So you need the additional funds and resources to get to the grocery store, to get the funding. Do you know how much it cost, or the average family in public housing, the average public housing income, and this is a part of our housing study that we did. The average income is about, I think it was 18,000 and some change. And so take that divided by 4, which is basically what we get from our council paychecks, and imagine living off of that and trying to pay rent and trying to provide all of these necessary expenses. And so this program stands to assist and help families with those expenses. It's on a rolling basis, so you don't stay. If you sign up once, you don't stay on the program for a lifetime. It changes yearly. But I just think it's a really good investment. And so I'll be creating an amendment to ask for one-time funds to run a pilot program similar to this and to do the research here in the city. Again, I would encourage my colleagues to really just look at this report. I want to find the one page just to highlight some of the examples, and then I want to turn it over for questions. I just really have to find this. I had it saved in my laptop, sorry, but I didn't bring my...
Well, while you're looking for that, let me interject. I heard an NPR discussion about this and the incredible success in Stockton. I don't know if we can be as big as their program, but it had a dramatic and permanent effect on lives. It allowed people such things as the ability to go out on job interviews, simple things like that, or have a vehicle so they could take a new job more distant from their home. And what it did was kickstart them up into a whole nother notch of life living, an income level and a style of living. And it does seem to me that the bottom line, if we're going to address the income disparity in this country and all of the social problems that are manifest at the end of the spectrum where you don't have the means, that it's programs like this that can do that. And I know it sounds ultra liberal, and I don't usually get identified with being ultra liberal, but I think these are the programs, and I think that it's the kind of thing that can attract people to Annapolis. I think it can give hope to people who are already here, just like some of the programs that Toll is doing, the VIP program, where we're giving out T-shirts, a simple thing, but it's saying we recognize you're here, we recognize that there are things going on, and we are giving you value just by virtue of recognizing you. So I don't know how robust we can be, or certainly as big as Stockton. We're not that kind of size of city, but it is demonstrated that these programs make a difference, and they carry a much broader psychological win with them than just the people specifically affected by the program. And the fact that it's a rotating program means you'll get your chance sometime too. So I think there's a hope issue here that it really does. So I'm certainly going to support this, and we need to think about what we need to do to get it going legislatively and how we get it seated with some funding. But gosh, it feels like it's certainly worth a try. Doing the same things with the same result is not really what we should be doing. We know what that ends up in. So I'm glad you have brought this to us, and I think it's really something we should think about.
I appreciate that. And I would ask my colleagues just to look at page 11 quickly. When you look at the aggregate spending, a part of the program is that the city would hand out the card. And so the city can also, or the administrator of this program, would probably, in my mind, would have to be, which I hate that it would have to be under planning and zoning and economic, the Office of Economic Development, or maybe tied in with Teresa's group somehow, some way. I'm not exactly sure on that. But if you look at page 11, there's a breakdown of the spending of how each family use their card, and this is total. You know, the number one thing was food, followed by sales and merchandise, followed by utilities, auto care, services, transportation, insurance, medical. So these are like pressing needs. It's not like they're going out and buying, 40s. Like, people are spending the money responsibly, and the city is able to collect the data to see where it is being spent. So if there is a family that is abusing the program, it can be dealt with. So there are checks and balances in programs like this. And to your point, it doesn't have to be 100 families. I think that may be far too large for the city of Annapolis. We start with something like 50, but it definitely can be done. And the effects are long lasting. And people are just able to get what they need done. Imagine waking up in the morning and not being stressed about, what am I going to do for lunch? Can I afford lunch today? How am I going to get to work? Can I, do I have to walk, or do I got to borrow money to get an Uber? Like, these are real, problems that people are facing every single day in our communities. And I think that any way we can help them, we should. And I just think this is the right thing, and it's the right time, considering our approach to really stepping up and handle some of these social issues. Will the price tag be, bigger than something that we are typically used to? I'm sure it will. But as the manager, city manager, and finance director have said, you got to have a place to, you have to have the money in the budget. I think in the initial pilot, I would be very, very interested in using some one-time funds. The issue is then the reoccurring expense annually because the program will be successful. And so that is also why I'm so hard pressed on finding ways to create revenue. Because if we want to, step up to the challenges with these social programs and stuff, we got to fund it some way, and it can't be off the back of a $30 fee from a permit application or something like. And so, I'm really looking at some funding opportunities as well. And to that point, Jody, when I was having that finance conversation earlier, I made a question, and I'm wondering if somebody here can help me figure it out. How can we be eligible? How do we ask? How do we start the process of getting or applying for eligibility to get the sales tax similar to what Ocean City does? Can we go to the state and say, look, we are, strapped for cash. We can, but we don't want to raise property taxes anymore. How can, we get that additional revenue? So that's my first question. And then I had a follow-up based off of something we got in email earlier.
So I believe that type of thing would definitely require working with the delegation at the state level to give us the authority from the state to do such, to either get a portion of what they're collecting or to assess any kind of additional local tax. And I don't know if there's any authority that in the state of Maryland where where a municipality can add on its own local tax, sales tax. But if not, we'd have to try to get a portion of what the state is collecting, and that would have to go through the delegation. In addition, you're taking revenue from the state that they're currently using for themselves. So there's probably going to be some pushback there, but that's where we'd have to start.
So just to follow up with that, would it be helpful then if, and maybe Mr. City Attorney, I'm sorry, I hate to drag it, but would it then be helpful maybe to draft a resolution, get some feelers from my colleagues to see if they'd be willing to endorse an act like that to the state delegation? Or would you do it in a formal letter through the city manager's office or something?
So I'm going to defer these questions to the city manager and then the Office of Law because I don't know the actual steps we should take next.
Yeah, you don't have to do a resolution to ask us to look
So you
into
do
it.
that?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate that. And then also as it relates to revenue, we received a forward earlier from the county, and I read it briefly, but they were, talking about the tax and all that stuff, and ours was at like 30, it was like 0.35 or something. And they were saying in actuality, and for us to be, let me try to pull it up because I don't want to get it wrong, but I think it was saying that it should have really been at like 0.59 or something. Like our tax, the property tax should actually be much higher. Let me see if I can pull it up really quick. We just got it earlier today.
Are you talking about the tax
differential? Yep.
Okay, so that is the county calculating what tax rate the county will charge city residents. And they evaluate all of the costs that the county incurs and determine if those are costs related to everybody in the county or just to county residents. For instance, the city residents pay for their own fire service. So that would be, the county would not include that in the tax differential. Same thing for the police services. They would not charge city residents for county police services. But there are services such as the library, the Board of Education, funding, those types of, the health department, social services, where it is a county-wide service and they need to collect taxes from city residents for those services. And that is why the city's county tax rate is lower because they're already paying the city for some of those services.
Okay. Thank you so much for explaining that. Because I read it earlier and I was like, it's very interesting in the chart they said
to discuss those percentages, I'd have to actually look at the letter to see what you're referring to.
Yeah, okay, we can do that
further.
offline. I just thought that was interesting. But I really am just seeking out ways to create revenue and because I think this program is going to be successful and so we'll need to fund it. But thank you guys so this will be an amendment as well. And that probably was my biggest one. So there you go.
So, Alderman Gay, can we share the podium a little bit and go to Alderwoman Tierney? We can go around.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Of course. No, it's all good stuff. In fact, this is a perfect example of where, and Alderwoman Finlayson will understand what I'm saying, where metrics and can be applied to a social program and, to that benefit. The numbers and everything are amazing. One year there was, and this is the measurement, one year there was a 13% increase in full employment that I read. So, yeah. But I just, before I ask my 3 quick questions, I don't want to lose the opportunity to go back to what Rob was talking about with sidewalks and Dwan was talking about with these very important social issues. And I'm really glad that the departments are here to hear that, because per Article 3, Section 2 of the Charter, it reads that we have a responsibility granted to us as a municipality to provide these services, regrade the streets, provide sidewalks. So as policymakers, our hands are tied in that we are limited on where we can find the money for this stuff. And because that's what we're told to do, in lieu of having a linear budget, we have a fixed budget and we're told if you want something, you have to find the money for it. And that's what we expect from the department. So, but the good news is that our budget after 3 years is in a great position to use as a platform to look at where we spend the money, and it will make these choices much more easier. And that's a really good place to be right now, because this is the first time that, at least since I've been involved with the budget, that we are talking about policy issues and how we can, we can't do this without money, as you all well know. So I think I'm glad you guys mentioned that stuff, because it's very difficult. So getting to the budget, I just want to ask about, you may have talked about this at one of the finance committee meetings. It's about grants. Grants are good. They're money that's given to us. Grants are a good thing. But I just want to ask about a couple that are quite substantial and how that money is going to be spent, unless I don't see it in detail in the budget. The first one is the police, and it's a...
Do you have a page number in the binder?
It's page, it's a federal grant. Hold on, let me get my notes. Police, it's a state grant for $900,000, and state grants are on page 29.
Thank you.
What is that? Is it the state aid for police protection?
Yes.
Okay, that grant actually funds about a dozen police positions, and I think that the police department can come up and specify which positions they're charging directly there. They're not in the general fund, they're actually assigned to that grant.
Yeah, the title's misleading. Oh, go ahead. It says state aid for police protection. I guess it's state funding for police.
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay.
For police officer positions.
Okay, so how many, 900,000 is providing in this budget, how many positions?
Approximately about 10.
Okay.
It's usually, and that's what we've gotten for, I'd have to look, but several years. We usually get somewhere around $1 million.
Okay, so that's like the SAFER grant. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. All right. That's good. All right. That's all I need to know on that one. In planning and zoning, there's a $487,300 one that's called, it's a federal grant for military installation resiliency. I was just curious on what kind of staff time that's going to take up, and what, if there's any sort of, that would be under federal grants, page 27 or 28. Under planning and zoning.
28, page 28.
Yeah, planning and zoning. It's military installation resiliency. Sounds kind of serious. Dr. Nash. Is this the one working with the Naval Academy?
Yes, Naval Academy and Anne Arundel County. It's focusing on resiliency planning. It's been a decent amount of time for me. We actually have a 10% match for meeting with staff time, but we're about to hire a consultant who is amazing, and so they're going to be doing, 95% of the work. So it's after we got the RFP out and hired the firm, it's mostly just going to be managing them, but I don't anticipate it to be too much work. And it's a lot of money. We're going to get a really good product and set ourselves up for future federal funding. So it's definitely worth it.
Okay, that's fantastic. And the last one is OEM. I think I know the answer to this, but again, it's a huge grant, and I think it goes to basically running the department, but I wasn't quite sure. It's a federal grant under Office of Emergency Management. Make sure I'm in the grant. Yeah, it's $1.9 million. So that's fantastic. I just wanted to understand where it goes, but I assume, and I don't see Kevin Simmons here, but yeah, that's, I'm sure that covers most of his staff.
What? Sure.
Oh.
I can speak to it a little.
No, we want Kevin. He's been sitting back there doing nothing, so. No. I'm throwing you a softball, Kevin, and asking about the grant you received for $1.9 million. That's I think one of the largest grants we receive, and I just want to know how you spend it and how you orchestrate it to move your department in the right direction.
Good evening. That's called the Urban Area Security Grant.
Yes, sir.
We get it every year, and basically it goes to everyone behind me. We get on average somewhere in between $800,000 to $1 million.
Yeah. So that's I thought that, and I guess I also wanted to show you as a great example of supporting a department.
Right. It saves the city a lot of money. The hazmat unit for the fire department, training for the police department, equipment for the police department, terrorism training, you name it. We have grants that deal with it.
And there's no risk in ever losing that grant, or you just keep...
That grant actually pays for my planners as well. That grant, I think about $300,000 comes out every year for my planners. The ones that I want to turn into civil service.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. They were big chunks of money, and I just wanted to know how they were being spent.
Okay, Alderman Savage has a follow-up.
Yeah, just quick follow-up for Dr. Nash. The resilience, you said that grant money was being spent to finish the resilience study, or is that a new study?
No, Jackie Bell is finishing that resiliency plan that we started with Denise and Joanna Throw. There might be additional work from that resiliency plan that we will work on with this grant opportunity as well. But we wanted to go ahead and finish that first resiliency plan as sort of a phase one of our larger resiliency efforts.
And so this pool of money, can you explain again, this pool of money is going towards?
It's going to be looking at resiliency planning for the city of Annapolis, but focusing on parts of the city that have resiliency threats that would affect the mission of U.S. Navy at Annapolis.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Are there other questions, observations from any of the council members? Wow. Could we get out of here early? Yes, I know. The Planning Commission's at 7 and a lot of important stuff. Look, Alderwoman Finlayson.
Mr. Chair, I have been, I sent you an amendment to the report, an entirely new last paragraph. That will speak to what I hope will be 2 recommendations from the Finance Committee. One will be funding a community survey that will help us to determine which services the community values and would like for us to continue to provide at whatever cost. And the second would be the creation of a task force that would investigate outsourcing any of our services to the county. Every year during the budget process, this discussion comes up about us outsourcing police and fire and, any number of other services. And so I think we have to truly, instead of just talking about it and making projections and guesses about it, that we actually research and find out what's valid and what isn't. So the second piece of that would be the creation of a task force. I'm asking for a resolution from the law department that will get that done. So I just wanted everybody to be aware those two things are coming.
Thank you. I think those are both really great questions, particularly the latter. It does come up. Let's send this to the county. And first of all, there's some basic assumptions there that might not be valid, which is that the county will take it, but also that the county can do it for less money than we can do it. Now, the county does have economies of scale. That's not arguable, but whether that makes up for the all of the dislocation and the loss of autonomy that we would have is very much a question. But you're right. We just speculate on it. We never really empiricize it. And it is a question that comes up from our constituents, and I think they deserve an analysis and an answer. I don't know who would do that for us or how much it would cost. The task force hopefully would be relatively free. We can get some knowledgeable people, but if they need support, we'll give them support. But I think you're right on target. I certainly know I can support that addition to our report.
I'm going to request that we take the funds out of the contingency fund, and that with the city manager's direction that it'll be, sorry, Dr. Nash, in the planning department part of, I don't know what it's going to be part of, but it'll be out of the planning department, correct?
Right. Well, first we'll have to get a cost estimate. So we'll have to get a cost estimate. We need to get some legislation, and it could be legitimate one-time only funding.
But I would like for us to codify that we're going to do this. We always talk about doing it.
Well, yes.
But I would like for us to do it. So,
Alderwoman Tierney.
Speaking of what we always talk about, sort of subject to some, I guess, but privatizing or outsourcing the Pitt Moyer Center, could that be part of this study, or that's another thing we keep talking about, and we should have some kind of task force to look at that. I mean, I know Alderman Gay would support that.
Listen, the people is mad about that.
I know. So I'm out on my own here.
No, I got you. I'm still curious to see what the study would bring back, but
I mean, just to conclude on it, I'm just saying it.
They said it was a study done when it was first built. I mean, can we find it? I don't know where it is.
I don't remember a study being done. Some of us did our own legwork and looked into
nothing
it.
official.
I don't think there was a study done. I saw some of the same comments, and people are yelling at you because you want to look into a possible alternative. That's all.
And again, it's just an idea, and I just want to see what the numbers would be.
Right.
Right. Well, and you have to remember what Director Trader told us too, that just putting it out there as a commercial entity doesn't necessarily serve the population that we want and I think need to be served. So we may be able to find something that's cost effective, but outcome not effective. So I think these fall under the same umbrella. I think starting with legislation, I think that comes out of the Finance Committee. We work with the city manager and the city attorney and get that in the hopper. I think all of these things are the right prelude for all the hard thinking we want to do as we get into the next year and think about contract renegotiations and all of these other things that,
we would have caveats like no jobs would be lost, that kind of thing, like we did. It's a poor example, but like we did when we privatized the refuse collection. We didn't want to lose the city employees.
yeah, that could have been a one-off kind of thing. It just happened at the right time with the right things. And we are now seeing that our outsourcing costs are starting to catch back up to where we were doing it internally. So these are the kinds of things I think any good system would look at from time to time, evaluate from time to time.
I know John Hammond would love to be on the county city task
Yeah, well, I thought of him too. But one of the things we need to be careful about, and I think we need to make sure these are explorations. This is not an initiative to do these things. This is an exploration to find out if it's even worth thinking about. Staff do listen to us occasionally or hear about what we do. And so I think we need to make clear that these are things that we are exploring in terms of just finding out if there's even any feasibility, not an initiative to start wholesale contracting out. So, but I think those are two good things we can get in the report. Takia also sent me some parking lot issues that we always include in the report, and I didn't have in the first draft, so we'll have to catch up on that. But yes, Alderman Gay.
Just one last question for the finance director before we leave, because there's another amendment, and I just want to get the clarification while we're here. So obviously the ADU thing is coming down the pipeline, accessory dwelling units, and it looks like it may pass this time around. And so a part of that is we're trying to create incentives for property owners to actually want to invest in creating these accessory dwelling units. And so I am interested in creating a property tax incentive for individuals that build accessory dwelling units and rent them to low-income families or individuals. How would is that something that would have to be introduced in this budget, or how would I go about doing something like that?
So, presuming that's something that we could initiate and carry out here at the city on our own, give some kind of tax benefit for city taxes, we would only be able to impact city taxes. It would impact revenue. So we'd have to figure out what the concept is and how much revenue we think we would lose if we were to give these benefits, these tax incentives. So depending on what you're thinking of as far as the numbers are concerned, we'd have to do some kind of projection to figure out how much revenue we think we'd be losing. We may not know that until the program gets started and we figure out how many take advantage of the program as well. We would. If you wanted, it's going to impact revenue, so I would have to lower my revenue estimates. Then we'd have to figure out either we need to cut something else from the budget so we're not spending as much, or decide we're going to use it from another source. But if you intend it to be an ongoing program, we should try to trim expenses from another place in the budget.
Yeah, and realistically, I don't think we're talking about.
It would take some time to
houses or nothing,
I guess I'd have to get some idea how many houses would be impacted, what kind of an incentive you're trying to provide in order to calculate what the revenue impact is. Are we talking 10,000 a year? Are we talking 100,000? Are we talking 500,000?
Well, something that's, that's what I'm saying. Maybe
it would take some time to project it.
Yeah.
And if you're trying to have this take effect in the FY22 budget, as an amendment, we'd have to reduce revenue and reduce spending somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's why I want to be able to talk with you to say what is a good percentage that would, so that it would be an incentive, but that it would also not, destroy the budget. And maybe we can talk about a balance. Obviously, it would be based off of the value of each individual home. So something that would, just work for all.
Yeah. So, and another thing we need to do is to work with the Office of Law to make sure we're not doing something that we're not authorized to do.
Okay.
That would be one of the first steps.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank the staff for being here, participating with us, and answering questions. I hope you value the dialogue as much as we do. It is important to us. And for my colleagues, I have to say, we embarked on this. We were taking a flyer, and I think the level of discussion and the issues you brought to the table have been extraordinary. And I'm very proud of you, and I'm very pleased with what we've done here. I think this is the right level of effort for the city council, the right kind of thing to talk about. And I think it's particularly important to talk about it in front of the people who will have to carry it out and will have to understand and maybe even correct our thinking or impressions about things. But I think this has been very good, and I certainly appreciate all of you attending and contributing. And with that, I will look to my colleague on the Finance Committee to bring us to a close.
Just real quick, the task force, we will be making our presentation June the 10th at 4:30. The Affordable Housing Task Force, the whole presentation, we're done. So, yep.
Alderman, isn't there another event? Is it tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow also, please join us for the unveiling of the recreational centers. 12 o'clock? Look, I'm on for the resource centers. At 12 o'clock at Robinwood is the first one, and then again at Eastport Terrace and Harbor House. It's been a long time coming. Amen.
So both are on the same day?
Okay. Alderman Payon.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Second it.
Well, I can't second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Again, thank you, everyone. We really do appreciate your participation.